I think it's just because we were really hot. We played around for years with the ideas of the vests. They were always heavy. They didn't really cool you. We tried the skull caps, like I said, the things that wrapped around your neck. And then we had an employee who was having a rough day and we had to pull her out. So we started bringing up those conversations again. And then we all started talking and Rich was involved, our boss. And we said about the cooling, the flight hood, the flight hoods. Yeah. And he said that'd be a good option.
Rising above the buzz of ultrasonic cleaners and the clanking of stainless steel are the ideas and voices that are changing the industry. You're listening to the Beyond Clean podcast, the central nexus for people, processes, and products that are improving our sterile processing world. Each week, we speak with frontline technicians, CEOs, engineers, and entrepreneurs with a common goal to help you fight dirty every instrument, every time. Whether you're tuning in for education or inspiration, we're glad you did. Now, turn on those washers and turn up the volume. It's time to go beyond clean.
We are speaking with Vanessa Cavanaugh, SPD Educator, and LaShonda Rhodes, Advanced Medical Supply Tech, and Shannon Stankinas, Advanced Medical Supply Tech. They all work together. They've got a cool little story for us on the podcast today. And Hank, they're fairly local to us. I'd say, everybody's kind of local in our virtual world, but these ladies actually are local to us here in Pennsylvania. And they've got a cool little story about not really innovating a new product, but innovating a new use for a product to solve an age-old problem.
That's right, Justin. I titled this episode, Not in Our House, Team Approach to Decon Protection. And it really does. It brings out the themes of teamwork, the themes of speaking up about opportunities or gaps that you may see on the front lines in your own department. So I'm really hoping that folks can tune into this episode, not only hear this story, but apply this story to all other areas of your department that may be in need of change, and hopefully take some good takeaways and insights from how this team made it happen at their department.
All right, everybody, stay with us. We're going to be right back. Cool and fun conversation with Vanessa, LaShonda, and Shannon coming up next. I'm Justin Poulin.
And I'm Hank Balch.
From 17 Studios, you're listening to Beyond Clean, the global voice of sterile processing.
All right, today on Beyond Clean, we have 3 guests for you, and this is going to be a very fun conversation about really taking a team approach. That's why we have 3. 2 is a partnership. 3 is a team that we're speaking with today. Vanessa Cavanaugh, SPD Educator, LaShonda Rhodes, Advanced Medical Supply Tech, and Shannon Stankinas, Advanced Medical Supply Tech, are joining us. And this is the season of PPE and protection, and we're talking specifically in Decon. So we've got 3 of you to introduce. I'd like to start with Vanessa. Maybe you can all just tell us a little bit about your backgrounds and the work that you're doing and really the project that we're going to be highlighting today.
Hey, thanks for the invite. I'm Vanessa Cavanaugh, and like Justin said, I'm the SPD Educator. I do pretty much a typical educator role. I make sure my team is hopefully up to date on the latest and greatest sterile processing knowledge. I also help out in the department as needed. And the project we're going to be talking about today is pretty cool. It was come up with as a team. So, yeah, it's fun.
I love the team story. I think collaboration, working together, making changes, change management, these are the kinds of topics, at least thematically, that have come up on so many different episodes. Routinely, this is a theme. So I can't wait to hear about your team approach. But before we get started, just to kind of loosen things up and make sure we're all having fun, we've got a warm-up question as we've started to introduce in this season. What is and all three of you have to answer. And while a consensus will definitely enhance your team approach, it would be cool if we had a few different answers to this. What's your favorite nickname for the decontamination area?
I just call it Decon for the most part.
I can't say it on air.
I don't want to work there today.
I had a friend who would always say, "Oh, Vanessa's in the dungeon today."
The dungeon, yes.
All right.
Typically Decon.
The dungeon, the bleep, and Decon. And the old reliable Decon. That's great. That's really great. Now, you said, where I don't want to be there today, LaShonda. And I'm assuming that I don't want to be there today is precisely how this team approach and this project came about, is how do we make it better?
Yeah. As a team, we had people get hot and stuff, so we were trying to look for solutions so they don't pass out or whatever. And we were talking about the skull caps and the cooling things and the vest. And then me and Rich were talking, and we were all talking about the hoods for the OR for the air to blow on us. And we were talking about the pappers. So we were able to do the flight hood. So that's how we kind of came up with that.
So I know we jumped into the warm-up question, but I want to give LaShonda and Shannon both a chance, too, to introduce yourself a little bit more. We got Vanessa's background, educator and such, but can you guys maybe fill in any other gaps you want to think would be important for the audience to know about you?
I've been a sterile processing tech for 16 years, so I've been doing it a long time. I enjoy my job. But yeah, that's pretty much me.
And for me, I actually did not know sterile processing exists until about 7 years ago. I had some health issues. I lost my job. I was watching TV, and there was a commercial on for KTI for sterile processing. I'm like, oh, that looks cool. So I wasn't working. So I went to school. I did my externship here. And then eventually I got hired here. So I'll be here 5 years, the end of April.
Yeah, we love those stories about how folks just stumble into sterile processing. We all come in all kinds of different ways.
It's really, I think we all do.
Yeah.
The sad part of that story is that the KTI actually closed that program eventually, which is unfortunate.
Yep, right after I graduated, they shut down. So I made it in just in time.
Yeah, yes, you did.
Yeah, those pipelines, for training and recruiting, they're really shaking up these days with the staffing shortages. And honestly, bringing us kind of back to this conversation, one of the contributing factors to finding people and keeping people is when they first set foot into decontam or whatever you want to call it. And they're like, you want to put me in this room for how long? And you want me to be doing what? And you want to protect me with that, thin piece of plastic and a little mask here. Lots of people, they don't even make it through the tour, and all the bells and whistles start going off in their head like, I'm not sure we can do this, or I'm not sure this is what I signed up for. So talk us through, I know you kind of introduced a little bit with the kind of early stage of this, right? People back in Decon, they're getting hot. And let's look at what the options are out there today that are being used even across the facility. So as you got going, how did the idea get traction? Is this an idea that came from the frontline staff? Was this something that, the educators or the leads kind of said, hey, we're getting some concerns, or we have concerns about this? Is come kind of top down? Walk us through that phase.
I think it's just because we were really hot. We played around for years with the ideas of the vests. They were always heavy. They didn't really cool you. We tried the skull caps, like I said, the things that wrapped around your neck. And then we had an employee who was having a rough day, and we had to pull her out. So we started bringing up those conversations again. And then we all started talking, and Rich was involved, our boss. And we said about the cooling, the
flight hood.
The flight hoods.
Yeah.
And he said that'd be a good option. He went down to the OR, gave us some to trial, and that's how that came about. We started trialing them.
Yep, they let us borrow the helmet and some of the disposable hoods, and I think positive reviews all around.
Yeah.
Had that ever been used for the purpose that you wanted to use it for? Did anybody tell you like, oh yeah, we've done that in a few situations? Or do you feel like this was the first time that anybody had, at least, maybe it wasn't the first time somebody thought of it, but the first time anybody had actually tried it?
No, this is our first time.
Yeah, not that anyone's ever told us.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we've heard the name Rich a couple of times. Do you want to fill in the gap on who that person is, especially because a lot of folks are going to be tuning in, to this episode, because we're going to kind of promote it as, hey, this is a team that saw a problem and identified a solution and then went through that process to get it. And I think it's just really important to understand who's involved in this process. Like you mentioned, hey, like we had someone who's having a rough day, and then we took this, somewhere else, and that somewhere else, it sounded like it was Rich, and then Rich did a couple of other things. So, what role did Rich play in this?
Once Rich gets an idea in his head, you can't stop him. He's just on the ball.
He's worked in the OR as a scrub tech, so he knew about the hoods too. That also helped. So, and I know about the PAPRs. I know they wear them down in endo and different places. So we kind of just started talking about the different possibilities of trialing them and going to the OR and taking them.
Yeah.
And trialing them.
Just outside the box.
He's our chief.
He's our boss.
Okay, department leader. Okay.
Yeah.
So in this trial process, like you kind of made it sound easy. We got a problem. We talked to Rich, and then we got some things down here and we trialed them and it was great. But something tells me there may be some other conversations or challenges in that flow that you had to work through, maybe even that Rich had to work through on behalf of the department. Can you talk about any of those challenges or concerns in the trialing process or in that discovery process to figure out what are we going to do, what's going to work?
Trying to figure out how to put it on.
Yeah.
Okay.
We thought they'd be big, bulky. We weren't sure if we would like them bending over, them falling off of us. As we were trialing, we had to figure out how to adjust it. So it'd be patient with them as you're trialing them, because there's a lot to.
Yeah, it's a new product. It's a new way of doing things. So, we kind of helped each other out with that. Realistically, our OR was like, absolutely, we have a couple extras, borrow them, see if it helps. The person having the rough day, I almost passed out. So we really needed something to work. But yeah, once we got the hang of just putting it on and adjusting it, because they're individually adjustable, I guess, and they're really not burdensome. They're not difficult. Lots of pros.
So let me ask you a question about the solution first, because we're on a podcast, right? So it's going to be hard for people to visualize this a little bit, potentially if they've never seen it before. So I want you to kind of describe what that is so folks could get an idea. But also after that, and I can kind of ask this follow-up too, there's a couple of things that you've already kind of voiced of, hey, you had an advocate and your leader who believed in the idea and pursued the solution for you. And it sounds like you had an OR team that was already culturally on board, right? They weren't kind of like, hey, this is our space and this is our stuff. Don't be coming up here and asking for it. It sounds like a different response. So I kind of want to get into, how that has developed over time a little bit. But before we do that, what is this hood that we're talking about? What does it look like?
So it's the spacesuit. It's the one that we specifically use is the Striker Flight Hood. There's a, I guess you would call it a plastic headpiece. Mm-hmm. It hooks to a battery pack on your belt, and that supplies, that powers the fan inside the headpiece. And then the hood itself is single use. It's disposable. It's actually what they use during the orthopedic cases. So it comes sterile, which, in decontam is not a thing. Not, we don't need to worry about that. Yeah, you open it up, you attach it with these little magnets on the front, pull it over your head, and boom, there it is. It's on you.
Yeah, you were talking about all of the considerations that came into play as you were looking at this. And I was going to ask the question, yeah, I'm sure you had to figure out some infection, prevention or infection control types of challenges. But you just kind of answered that. The the one you went with is single use. So you don't really have that concern. Do you have to do any training around donning and doffing that's been a topic already this season, is donning and doffing gowns. So you have all this PPE. Does the hood kind of like present some challenges in terms of, making sure you take everything off in the right order or anything like that?
You just pull it right up over your head.
It tucks underneath your
gown,
your decon gown. So the part that you would grab to pull it off is underneath your gown anyway.
I want to go back, like I mentioned, to this kind of cultural piece, right? The background of all this, because I know there's going to be folks listening and thinking, if we had this idea, this would not have gone as smooth as it sounds like it has gone here. So what was happening culturally in the background, again, with your leader that, made this possible? And also, it sounds like a pretty smooth process across the board.
I mean, our boss is very much an out-of-the-box thinker.
Yes.
And he is probably the number one advocate for our department. And he is, even if he had gone down to the OR and they had said, you can't use it, he would have said, sorry about your opinion. I'm going to take one anyway because I have someone almost unconscious. And that's just the way it is. He's, our number one fan.
Do you think human resources played a part in this at all? And the reason I ask that is it's obviously an added cost, right? Especially if it's single use. So, there's budgetary dollars that have to be accessed, et cetera. But when you talk about the impact on an employee, I mean, obviously big concern for injury if they might pass out while performing duties in decon, and who knows what device they might have in their hands. Like, I could see the cost benefit if you have that scenario, but did human resources at all get involved? Were they part of it, or was your department leader kind of able to navigate all that cost structure somewhat independently? Like, he's able to make a lot of those decisions.
He figured it all out.
Yeah, between the heat issue and then, severe reduction in potential for, infection on us, with the splash study and whatnot coming out after the fact, all of that really weighed in our favor for acquiring this. So I don't think he got any pushback or challenge from anyone at our facility for, purchasing. I think we have four of the helmets, which those are reusable, but you just wipe them off with a disinfectant.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the splash study, obviously, in this season on PPE. I find it very interesting that you were able to and decided to move on this solution prior to that information coming out. I think anyone who has worked in decon has been concerned about those kinds of things previously, but we just hadn't had a lot of data to back it up. And so that, kind of, hey, we made this great decision for our department, and then to have a big study like that come out and be like, yeah, you did, because we got a lot of study and data that says this is a problem. I just think that's really powerful and a testimony, to your team's foresight and to your leader's foresight, like you said, with having an out-of-the-box kind of leader. It's really important that folks, hear that on this interview, that's the kind of leaders that we need in our departments to push us forward and to innovate in this way. So that's fantastic, Cher. Speaking of impact, right? Like, there's an impact to that particular staff member, right? Because now we're keeping them safe. But obviously there's been an impact across the whole team as you've implemented this solution. So what has that impact to the team, to your processes been?
It helps us during the summer. It helps us stay cooler. And then, like Vanessa said, we're not splashing everywhere. We're splashing ourselves. So that's helpful. And like me, I'm kind of messy around sinks, so.
Are people more willing to go into decon? Do they find are they less likely to hesitate, or it's just making them more comfortable when they get there?
Just like everybody, we're having a staffing shortage, so everyone's rotating through decon a lot more frequently than they would like. So it's a great help, but I don't know. I think everyone's burnt out on Decon at the moment.
It's not quite enough is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's really nice, but it's not like it doesn't solve all the problems.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that theme has come up, and I think that's another good challenge to the innovators who are tuning in is, hey, there's a lot of things about Decon that still need solving. It's not just a temperature piece. It's not just a splash piece. It's a safety piece. We talked to a lot of folks that are involved in automation and robotics, who are saying, hey, what are some things we can do to automate the dirty, the dull, and the dangerous out of what we do in Decon and sterile processing in particular? So I think that is an important takeaway of, hey, this is important for all the things that you've been describing, but it's not going to be the silver bullet that changes it from a difficult assignment, especially if you're short on staff, to some place that folks are necessarily volunteering for. There are some folks out there who love Decon. We do see that conversation out on social media. So I know you're out there.
We don't hate it, but
if you want the day to pass by quickly and you want to stay busy, then Decon is your zone. You will blink and your shift is hopefully over.
I love it.
Time passing.
So as we kind of move to a wrap here, I really want to get those, concrete takeaways to folks tuning in who are saying, I want to do experiments like this. Maybe it's not the same kind of thing. Maybe it's not a hood in Decon. Maybe it's a different kind of brush. Maybe it's a different inspection device or tool on the clean side. Maybe it's a different storage, whatever it is. There's a million kinds of decisions to innovate out there and improve. But a lot of times folks just don't know where to start. And because you guys have already been through this, you've learned some lessons along the way. So what would you tell or share? What kind of advice would you give to folks like that?
I mean, I would say look outside of the sterile processing space. There's plenty of inspiration in other fields that maybe whatever you need isn't actually created yet, but the inspiration is there, and, you can say something to someone who says something to someone, and now you're trying something new. Just keep your eyes open.
Don't be afraid to ask your leaders. I mean, if you want to try a different brush or something, ask them. Maybe they can, because, I know from purchasing aspect, some places you have to only buy from certain vendors, certain things. So maybe they can trial a different vendor or, go a different avenue.
I say I agree with what they both said. And it does really help if your leader is on your side. That's a big help too. So we're very lucky there.
There's definitely a message to leaders too, like just in hearing how the three of you came together to solve the problem is, very much if you allow the team to come up with ideas, they will probably feed you with a lot of ideas. That doesn't mean that every leader is going to be able to execute the way yours did. Because, I know Hank was looking for what was the grind on this, but you made a convincing case. You had a very urgent situation that needed to be handled. I think sometimes it's unfortunate, but it's those urgent scenarios that do create action a lot of time in healthcare. And we kind of stay in this stagnant area where we just wait for something to happen. And then all of a sudden, hey, we've got eyeballs, we've got attention, we've got to do something. And then we do it. But I think there's a lot of conversations that can be happening along the way. And, as you're going through the day-to-day grind, if you are inspired, by what Vanessa said, look at other industries, look at how other people solve certain challenges. Doesn't mean that they're going to be able to pull that into healthcare from the other industry, but there might be a theme or there might be a concept that you can start talking through. And you never know, there might actually be something out there that is built around that same concept that you just haven't seen yet. And I think it's important to have those collaborative discussions and those, really advocate for everybody who's working on the front lines to speak up, right? And, you obviously were encouraged to do that. And that's a sign of a very, healthy leadership culture. All right, ladies. Well, this was a really great conversation. And I just want to commend you on thinking outside of the box and really putting something in motion. And you really thought it through, like you did a good evaluation, because sometimes when you innovate, you feel like there may be blind spots because nothing's proven. And I think that creates a lot of hesitancy. And instead you went right after it, tested it. Obviously the infection control benefits, but even the potential concerns, like you worked through all of that. So kudos to all of you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us.
And that was Vanessa Cavanaugh, SPD Educator, LaShonda Rhodes, Advanced Medical Supply Tech, and Shannon Stankinas, Advanced Medical Supply Tech, and talking about a team approach to trying out new technology or protection, PPE protection in Decon. An interesting story. Definitely, I think there's going to be some people, Hank, that are going to listen to this episode and be a little jealous about the culture that they're in, because honestly, the speed and ease with which they went and found a solution that really hadn't been tried in SPD before, even though it was in the umbrella of surgical services, it really hadn't been tried before. And fortunately, they had this great partnership with the OR. They have a leader that was able to push this forward. And, I don't think it hurts that they had a situation that arose in the department that created urgency. But, honestly, overheating in Decon, and it also depends on, potentially the age of the facility that you're working in, but that's like a real thing. People can get really, really hot, extremely dehydrated. Like, these are just regular occupational hazards I think everybody needs to be thinking about.
Yeah, this is real life. I mean, even though the story is about one solution and one improvement, it's these kinds of episodes and interviews, honestly, Justin, that were the impetus for launching Beyond Clean way back in 2017, because we need to share these stories. We need to share these processes with each other. It would be a shame, to have a department that discovers this fantastic solution to decontam and protecting against splashes, protecting against heat, and no one ever hear about it. And so all the rest of us out here, still struggling and trying to reinvent the wheel. And, now we have an opportunity to bring these stories to light and, put a spotlight and a platform up to hear these new voices and insights. So I absolutely loved the topic and the team approach, and I love this story. And hopefully it inspires other folks out there. If you've got great ideas as you've implemented that you've seen work and you want to tell those, we want to hear them and we want to platform them here on Beyond Clean.
Yeah, definitely a fun group of professionals. And too bad, though, that this one solution didn't make people want to just jump right into Decon. But great conversation today. Speaking of great conversations, they're happening on social media. They're happening every day. If you're kind of not really out there, definitely create an account on LinkedIn. If you are on LinkedIn, find us. Just search for Beyond Clean. We're also on Facebook. We absolutely want you to like or comment on the post, but definitely get your voice out there. We talked about positive culture, and positive culture is lifting up voices. And we want to create that opportunity in social media and be very encouraging of you all. And also, I think you should download the Beyond Clean smartphone app because, well, it's smart. We got all of the episodes by category. Some of the episodes have bonus content. It's available for Apple, not so smart, and Android, smarter. That's for you, Hank.
Yeah, I know.
And you can just search for the Beyond Clean podcast in the App Store or on Google Play, download our app, and certainly give it a rating and a review while you're there. Because, as I mentioned, we love hearing from you. And another great way to reach out to us is by email. Just send an email to info@beyondclean.net. And really, that's going to do it for this show. Hank and I had a lot of fun with the team on the show today, and just want to thank everybody for tuning in to this episode of Beyond Clean. On behalf of Hank and myself, have a great day and keep fighting dirty.